Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Lisa Sakai. How are you today, Lisa?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me, Desiree. I'm so happy to be here.
Excellent. And I am honored to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Lisa, you are the co-founder of One Vision Retirement, and you have a very wide experience in life that has led you to this point, and you're going to share that with us. But for almost 14 years now, you have been a financial consultant and you've been working with clients around the country. And so we're going to talk a lot about finances, investment, retirement. But Lisa, would you please share with us how this journey came to be and what led you to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I do have kind of a strange entry into this industry. Most people, I would say, whether male or female, who are in finance started young, maybe had a finance degree. That was not my journey at all. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, one of the suburbs out there, and I wanted to be in the movie industry, not as an actor, but somebody either screenwriting or production or something like that. And so I went to school in Ohio, which was a culture shock a little bit for an LA kid. And I loved it, though. I loved every second of it. It was a great school. And then I came back and I started working in the movie industry. It was a very interesting experience. It was wonderful that it taught me certain things like how to pick up the phone and like have calls and stuff because I was shy and I still don't love talking on the phone. I'm still not past that a lot, but it helped me for some reason get through that. I ended up working at talent agencies. I worked for helping actors find jobs. And that was a lot of fun. I worked with some people who are doing quite well right now, which is nice. And I ended up working my way up to a big talent agency and kind of feeling a little not in the mix of it. So I was like, well, I'll move over to production. I worked at a big production office for a little bit and just wasn't feeling satisfied still. I felt like I was working hours upon hours. I was getting this epiphany actually happened when I was getting my boss's car washed for the fourth time that week. I was sitting there. It was before iPhones and stuff, so I didn't have anything to distract myself with. So I was thinking, I put so much time into this. My boss was lovely and a nice person, but they were greenlighting things I just thought were either subpar or not moral. I'm not a big, I'm a moral like that was never my thing, but I just felt like, ooh, why are we, ugh. And so I just decided that maybe this industry wasn't for me. And it also came from, I was sitting to interview to be the executive assistant or one of the executive assistants for Jerry Bruckheimer, who's obviously a huge producer. And that would have been an amazing opportunity. And they said, if Jerry calls at 3 a.m. and says, we need to jump on a plane to go to China, would you do that? And I couldn't lie. I said, no, I don't want to do that. And that kind of ends it. I mean, that put it all in perspective, right? So I didn't want that kind of life. And so I went 180 to being a teacher's assistant and I went to Japan for a year to teach English over there. And I'm half Japanese, so that was kind of nice to see culture and everything. And then I moved into teaching for a bit, got married, moved to Orange County, California. And the teaching industry had a lot of similarities to the movie industry. In some respects. It's much more corporate than people think it is. And people think I'm in a corporate world now, which is not compared to that. It's very corporate. It's very, you do things the way we tell you to do things. No thinking outside the box. None of that stuff. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people saw this during COVID with their kids, seeing how things were going on. It doesn't mean that teachers are doing a bad job. It just means that it's not the most enriching information that keeps kids interested. Kids were bored, to be frank, in the classroom. And I was tired of being the one that was making them bored. And it was around 2010. So it was right after the economic collapse. And and different things like that. And it just was hard to get a full-time job. I was getting pink slipped, which means basically, being let go and then rehired, at the end of the summer to try to keep my income level down. And I just was kind of done with all that. I was substitute teaching and been giving all these worksheets to kids. It was turning into a nightmare. So I started, well, actually it wasn't Googling, it was Monster. I don't even know if monster.com still, but I was on Monster looking for different jobs. And I came across an industry that wants teachers, which was insurance and still is insurance, actually. And they like teachers because we can explain things in a way that financial professionals can't, in a way that's easy for people to understand. We have a calming nature. We get into the details, but not too deep that people can't go there with us, so it makes sense that they wanted teachers. And so I started my career in insurance. I had zero knowledge about finance and insurance. In fact, that was like an Achilles heel for me. I felt really stupid when it came to finance. I tell this story, it's 100% true. My husband and I had gotten married, and he was doing the bills one Sunday, and he looks at me and he goes, I think we should move our money from the bank account to something that's getting a higher interest. What do you think? And I felt so stupid because I thought interests are for loans. That's our money. That's not a loan. What is he talking about? And this is my husband who I just married like a couple months earlier. So we should be in the honeymoon phase, right? And I was so embarrassed to ask him, I don't know what you're talking about. So I just told him to leave it. And we had used majority of his money for our down payment on our home. So that was majority of my money. And he's like, okay, whatever you'd like. And while that didn't turn out to be such a horrible decision, it was a decision made out of fear of looking stupid, of making a mistake, of all these insecurities. I feel like a lot of women, I work with women a lot, I feel like a lot of us have. And I still remember that. I still remember that feeling I got when he asked me that, because I thought, I don't want him to think I'm stupid because this is easy stuff. And why don't I understand this? And so I'm stepping into this world of doing this. And I felt like the dumbest person in the world every single day, because I'd sit through trainings or I'd take these exams I need to take. And I didn't understand any of this stuff. And I'm not a good test taker, so I have to understand in order to do well on the test. And essentially, it slowly but surely started to sink in. It started to make sense. I started talking to clients or, prospects at that point, and it was starting to make more sense. And I was realizing, oh, I actually am starting to know more than the client sitting in front of me and that kind of thing. And that was, 13 years ago almost. So it took some time, and then I moved into financial planning from that side of it. And it's been kind of more of a consultative, helping with investments, helping with that. But really, it's about the plan. It's all about how this is going to affect your life. What we need to put in place needs to fit with the person I'm sitting in front of. Not everybody's in the same investments. Not everybody's got the same plan, because we're all different. And then I've taken on a role in the last couple of years of really trying to empower women to start to get more comfortable saying, I don't know. And it's okay, I don't know. And I'm going to figure out what the answer is, because I don't think we hear that enough. So that's long story, but that's kind of how I got to where I am. And then my business partner, I opened One Vision Retirement almost 4 years ago, 4 years in January of 2025. So 4 years.
Awesome. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that with us. I love so much that you said, we need to hear, I don't know, let me figure it out. It's like sort of being okay with that learning position, being in a position to learn something new. And it can be scary, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think that when we give ourselves the opportunity to learn, it opens everything up for us, right? And I just want to say, it sounds like we're similar in age. And so I remember what it was like before the iPhone as well. But, I want to just say that it wasn't that long ago that women did not have control of their own money, right? And so moms teaching their daughters how to manage money, open bank accounts, understand what interest rates are, that is so, so new. And it's crazy to say that, but it's true. So for those of us who were born in the 70s and, maybe even early 80s, it wasn't typical that women understood how that stuff works. And so it's so important that we educate our daughters nieces, friends, whoever we have that are in our lives, to help them understand what these things mean and what it means for their future. So I think the work that you're doing is fantastic. I love it. So
Thank
bravo.
you. Thank you. I totally agree. I think it's so new, but at the same time, so empowering once you get it. And it doesn't mean you have to do it all on your own. Like people just assume, well, if I'm trying to, help somebody figure out or understand something that I'm, talking my way out of a job. That's not true. Most people don't want to do what I'm doing for them all the time. But I do think it's important to start to build that knowledge so that you can be an active participant in your planning versus, somebody telling you what you're supposed to do and not really knowing if that's the right thing to do or not. And also, I hate to say it, but there's something about the relationship sometimes between the financial advisor and the client where the client doesn't feel comfortable saying, I don't understand what you're talking about, or why would we do it that way? Or is there a different way we should be doing it? Like we're omnipotent or something, that we can't be touched and you can't ask questions. I think you should be asking questions because you can't build trust with anybody that way. And unfortunately, I've had some people going through losses of spouses and things like that recently. And during times like that, you need to trust your person. If you don't trust them, because you don't know what questions to ask, because you're so busy dealing with, the heartache of losing a loved one, the emotions that go with that, that you need somebody to step in and guide and like kind of almost drag you along because that's not what you want to do. But at the same time, it's so important you get that done. That's not something you can just sit around for 2 years and wait around. You've got to make sure your finances are in order. So it's so important to have that relationship built up the right way before something happens. And something's always going to happen, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a loved one, or we get sick, something happens. You just have to make sure you have that relationship with the person you're working with.
Yeah, you made some great points in there for sure, Lisa. I mean, it's so important, yes, to have that connection with the person that you're working with who's handling your money, essentially, with your input. But also, you've got to kind of be prepared for some of these things. We don't want to think about, you know, death and dying and all of the things that go around that. We don't want to, but we have to because it is a reality. We all will die eventually, and we've got to be prepared for that eventuality. And so what you're saying is, just being aware of all of the different pieces that go into what make up the whole,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're talking about, a home if you've been able to purchase one, and, the bank accounts, and if there's 401ks and all of these things. So it's really important that we understand all the different parts of it. And so, yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely is necessary to have someone that we can rely on and trust to help us through a lot of that. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good stuff.
Absolutely.
So you talk a lot about bucket list planning,
Mhm.
and I want to talk with you about this. And now it's, when we think about bucket list, right, and talking about death, it's the things that you want to do before that point in time, right? And many of us feel like, well, I'm in the middle of working right now. I'm not going to think about that stuff. That's for later. That's for when
Yeah.
I retire. But that's kind of not really how you look at it. And so why don't
Yeah.
you share with us your thoughts and what it means to be like bucket list planning? And there's something else that you talk about, and that's bucket list acceleration. So
Mhm.
please, Lisa, share with us what this means and how the listeners can begin to sort of
Yeah.
take these steps.
Yeah. So I think the bucket list acceleration and the bucket list planning kind of go hand in hand. Most advisors won't tell you this, and they either don't agree with me or whatever it is, but I feel like waiting until retirement for most people that doesn't work out great. Because unfortunately we have health issues, we have family obligations we didn't realize we're going to have happen. We are petrified that we're going to run out of money because the income has stopped, so we don't do that. And this whole old school concept of you just put money away, sock it away, invest it, do it. And then when you retire at golden age 65, your life will begin. I don't think that's a good idea for a couple of reasons. One of what I just talked about. But the other thing is, how do you know who you are if you don't experience life? How do you know what you want retirement to be like? And there's a financial advisor I heard on a podcast who said that his mother actually committed suicide because when she was in retirement, she couldn't figure out who she was, what her identity was. Now, that's an extreme, but I have seen it so that people are kind of unsatisfied in retirement because they are not sure who they're supposed to be. And on top of it, they waste a lot of money. Talk about the biggest fear people have in retirement is running out of money. Well, if you don't know what you want and you start dabbling around all over the place, you waste a lot of money, a lot of money. Actually, I was on another podcast and the lady was telling a story about her friend who had thought that he wanted to go fly fishing, in retirement. But he'd never gone fly fishing before, but that was okay. He was going to do it. So he bought the gear and bought a boat. Had went out weekend and ate it. I can't even imagine how much money this man spent on it. And so I think it is part of figuring out who we are outside of our work, outside of our family obligations, all that stuff that kind of happens when you're in those working years. And I think it's about figuring out what we like to do, what our life is going to look like in retirement, but also enjoying life. I think people put off enjoying their life because they think that that's the responsible thing to do. Now, this is a balance, though, because I have people who are like, YOLO, live your life once. I'm not going to worry about the future. That is not what I'm telling people to do. Obviously, I do planning. I think people should think about their future. But I do think that it's hard to plan for a future that you don't know about. So what bucket list planning is actually listing out things that you want to do. And I always say that we get in the trap of saying the responsible things that we're supposed to do in retirement. And it's, I hear the same thing all the time until I really start pulling it out. Actually, I had one couple recently who I did not have to, they knew exactly what they wanted to do and it was great. But it's usually travel, some kind of hobby, and it's never a big hobby. It's like painting or reading or something, read more or whatever it is. They want to spend time with family. They want to maybe do something very small, do a little charity work or something, but they never have any details because the first thing I ask is, oh, you want to travel? Where are we going first? And I 99% of the people have no idea, have never even thought about where they'd want to go first because in their mind, it's not achievable. I don't know why, but that's the block. It is unachievable. So I don't need to think about it right now. And it's not unachievable. You just have to have a plan to figure out when we're going. And we all have that, probably a girlfriend. For me, it's a girlfriend. I'll have that girlfriend who keeps saying that they're going to go do something. And they say year after year, take a certain cruise, go to a certain place, visit a certain friend, whatever. And they never do it. And you're just like, just do it. What is driving me crazy, right? And they never do it. And it's because they absolutely have no plan. And I do think the ability to save for the long term, as well as save for short term fun stuff like bucket list planning, is very achievable. And the bucket list planning teaches you how to plan for your future better. Because once you do one thing, you're going to go, how do I keep doing this? I don't want to stop doing this. I want to be able to continue to do this. And people are happier. I've had clients who come to me and said, I will work a little bit longer because I'm able to actually go do the things that I want to do. I'm able to take my 3 weeks vacation, which none of us ever take, right? It's we always take our 1.5 weeks and then, roll it over, get paid out on it. And we should be taking our full vacation. A, you need it, but B, why not take that time to do a big bucket list thing every year? Go to Greece, go to Rome, do that cruise. I'm doing all travel stuff, but maybe it's redoing that kitchen that you've been saying you're going to redo. Whatever that is, that stuff can be achieved, but you just have to have a goal for it. And unfortunately, not enough of us do that. And we just go, I'm going on vacation. And we shove it on a credit card and we, say, we'll figure it out later. And by the time we're done with the trip and trying to figure out how to pay it off, it is so stressful that people are like, I don't even know why I did that. So that's kind of what bucket list planning is teaching you how to think long-term and short-term and enjoy your life, but have a responsible way to do it so you can keep doing it. So
I love that. Thank you for the detail
yeah.
on that. And you're so right. I think we can't get anywhere if we don't have a plan, right? It's just like mapping out where we're going to go. If you don't have the GPS directions or whatever telling you how to get there, you're not going to get there. Just because you say, I want to get to point A, I don't know how I'm going to get there though. you need a plan. And so
Yeah.
that's so, so true. And, thank you for the reminder on that. We absolutely have to have a plan in order to achieve that dream, that goal, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So yeah, right on. Well, okay, how about bucket list acceleration then? And so what does that mean? And
Mhm.
what would the listeners be doing?
Yeah, so bucket list acceleration is basically the process I take people through because we're accelerating their bucket list, right? So basically, what we do is we go through what are the goals, what are we trying to accomplish, like all that stuff, and then we say what's the fun stuff we want to do before retirement. And for some people, I have to be frank because there's a new wave of this. For some people, it's retire early, and that's their bucket list. Like they're like, I want to have financial freedom as fast as possible. And so for them, the trips don't make any sense because they want to be done at 50 and be able to do their passion project, travel around the country, whatever that is. So for some people, their retirement is their bucket list thing because they want to do it as fast as possible. For other people, it is stuff like, go to Greece, let's say. Let's just use that as an example. So let's say you want to go to Greece on a cruise. We start by, calculating out approximately how much that's going to be. Obviously, we don't know for sure with inflation and everything else, but approximately how much do we need to save? We tack on a little bit due to different changes that happen. And then we put together a timeline, like when do we want to get there? How much, that kind of stuff. And so you start to back into saving for that trip. And some people can't get to the full trip. Let's say the trip's $10,000. Maybe $10,000 in a year is very hard to do and keep up with your other goals and your other things that you have to do. But maybe five is achievable. Five is better than not having anything saved and then trying to figure out how to pay that off. But people, it's funny, once they have a bigger goal that's more immediate, that is when magic happens because all that stuff that we didn't want to do, it was too much work. I don't want to look at my credit card. Who cares if I have three Netflix subscription? It's not that big of a deal. They're only like $10 a piece. Stuff like that. We immediately go, I want to go to Greece. That $30 a month makes a difference. Give me back my money, Netflix. They just become more focused. And that mentality actually helps you with your long-term goal as well as your short-term goal because we have something shorter term that we're focused on that we're excited about. Because retirement, as we talked about, is so people don't know what they're kind of looking forward to it, but they're kind of not looking forward to it. Retirement's a very loaded word. And so I thought, how do we find something that people are excited about in the short term to get them to focus on the little things that they think make no difference, but make all the difference in the world? Things like conscientious spending, things like making sure that you're looking at everything and you're prioritizing. Do I need that Amazon purchase or is that something that I can figure out a different way to have happen? And those little things, I did a video about like, does saving money on your everyday latte at Starbucks make that big of a difference? And it really doesn't when you like take the actual amount. There's all those graphs and people are like, oh, if you add 10% rate of return every year. And okay, I guess not everybody's going to get 10% because that's not their risk level and other things like that. But it's about the mindset of you are in control of your money. And I think that that's the shift that happens when you have a shorter term goal, like with bucket list planning and bucket list acceleration. It basically is to get those things checked off. You have that very short term focus that we are able to have, 1 or 2 years, and we don't lose motivation off of it because it's short term. And so we start turning on those good habits that we know we have, but we've just been putting off because retirement's 20 years from now. Whatever, I'll get it together. That's why you have this swell of people who are like 50 or 55 freaking out about retirement and rushing to retirement planning because they've pushed it off so long. But if I can get a 40-year-old to start doing bucket list acceleration alongside their long-term planning, they are going to be in so much of a better place because they have developed the habits and they're not going to have this mad rush at age 55 to get everything saved that I need to save for retirement at 65.
Oh my gosh, you're so right on, Lisa. I mean, when we think about retirement, we think that's like 30 years or 40 years from now, depending on what your age is. And so you're just like, that's a tomorrow problem, right? Like, I don't need to worry about that. I have so much time between now and then. This decision I'm making right now is not really going to have any influence on that whatsoever. But that's not really true. There is some some roll, like you said, and no, not everybody's getting 10% return. That would be amazing if we did on the money that, we're saving. But when you're 20 and you're making maybe 4%, by the time you're 65, that's a big deal, right? That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that's one point that I think is tremendous. And I think that what you shared about the rush when you're suddenly like 50 or 55 going, oh my God, I've only got 10 years now. And you're right, that your mind starts spinning like, am I going to even be able to make it now? So trying to find a bit more of a medium where, we make some changes. Hopefully, if we're in our 40s, make some changes to begin thinking forward on that stuff. And I love that you said when you've got a goal that's, closer, so it's a year, 2 years, maybe 5 years, now you've really got something in mind that you can work for. And so then you do make those changes, those small changes that make a difference. Great reminder for sure. Love it. Yeah. Okay, so I think you touched a little bit in there on like why knowing your why, quote unquote, why you want to be saving is important. But can you expand on that and also talk a little bit more about if somebody is setting goals, what are some like actionable steps they can do to achieve those goals?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So the why is a little bit what I touched on when it came to the retirement piece of like knowing what you want in retirement, knowing who you are outside of work or family obligations necessarily. But I think that if you have a set of values, and that doesn't mean, moral values or, treat everybody nicely or anything. I mean, like what is important to you and you know what your core values are, that makes a huge difference. A huge difference. Like I did my set of values a couple of years ago, and I didn't realize that gratitude was really important to me. Not just gratitude for myself, but I don't like it. I mean, this may sound judgmental, but I'm honest about who I am. I don't like it when other people are so ungrateful for what they have. Like it's not a quality of a person that I'm going to be necessarily very close to. And I didn't realize that until I took, a little exercise on my values. And we don't realize that our core values set a lot about who we are, what we want, that kind of thing. And our values kind of shatter the societal expectations of what we're supposed to do. So I've had people come to me and say, well, really in retirement, I just want to like sit on my back porch and read books for a year. And I said, well, why don't you do that? And they say, well, I've been told that that's not healthy to do, that I need to be out and doing stuff and I'm going to become a loner. And I guess societally, yeah, you're supposed to be out and having cruises and hanging out with friends on a Sunday night because you don't care about Monday. I don't know what you're supposed to be doing, but I guess that's what you're supposed to do. But if that's what you truly want and what you value in life is maybe peace is one of your values or education, that might, if it's not a fictional book, which, I guess could be educational, but, if there's a value in there that aligns with that, that keeps you stronger to say, no, I want to sit home and read. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make me boring. That doesn't make me not want to live my life. It just means that that's what I want to do. My dad did that. He reads most of the day and he watches the Cubs and drives me crazy about the Cubs. Those are the things that he does. But, he's never been super active when it came to his retirement, and partly because they did all the traveling that they wanted to do before he retired. And that was just not who he is. He is not a go out, have lots of friends, go golfing. Like that's not his personality. And I think it's important to know your why, who you are, and be comfortable with that so that you're not continually living somebody else's life. Because we go through all these years of work. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody loves their work 100%. I don't care if it's your passion or if it's not. There are days that you sit there and go, what am I doing? And I have an old mentor who used to say to me, you don't want to quit a couple of times a week. You're not doing it right, which sounds depressing, but I totally understand what he's saying. Like it's not all fun and games, even when you're doing what you love. And so why in retirement are we continually doing things we don't want to do? I mean, you're always going to have to as an adult, you still have to take a shower. You still have to, can't turn into a kid and just not do anything. But essentially, why are we doing things consistently for other people all the time in retirement when we finally broke away from that And that's one of the things that people want to do, is have that freedom element. And then we're not free of anything. So I think that that's the why piece of it. And now I can't remember what the other part of your question was. So apologize.
Oh, yeah, no, that's okay. Once we're really taking some time to think about what it is that we want to be doing later, and understanding what's important to us, what are some things that we can do now to
Mhm.
begin aligning things so that we can
Yeah.
achieve that goal? If we want to, sit on our porch and read books, or if we want to be golfing 3 times a week, or if we want to be taking cruises, what are things that we can be doing now that can help us
Right.
get there?
I think the first thing I tell people is to write like a description of your perfect Saturday. What does that look like? And even if you're married or you have a partner or best friend you do everything with, don't talk to each other before. Like, just do your own letter. You can do this letter, you can do a journal entry, you can do a picture. Doesn't matter to me. But I think you really need to understand that every day is a Saturday in retirement. So what does your ideal Saturday look like? Is it sitting there reading your book, having a nice cup of tea, and then maybe it turns into a glass of wine later on in the day? Is that what your ideal day is? Is it taking hikes? Is it, on a cruise ship, having a great time, seeing the world? What does your perfect Saturday look like? And I think once you have that visual, it makes it a lot easier to figure out what we're saving for. Obviously, I'm not telling people what they don't know, but I'm stating the obvious for a reason. It is a lot harder to save for the trip person than it is the person reading the book at home. It just is. Books can be expensive, but they're still not as expensive as going on world cruises, right? So that gives you a better idea of what you want your life to look like and how much you have to save for it, right? Because really, realistically, if if your expenses now are like $6,000 a month, people say, well, my house might be paid off or this, and there's always this facade that retirement is going to be cheaper. Then it's not necessarily true. In fact, I don't see it happen very often that retirement is actually cheaper. So you could probably say, oh, if it's $6,000 a month now, I'll need $6,000 a month as well when I'm retired. If I'm reading books, doing charity work, just kind of being more local community. If I'm traveling the world, it might be $10,000 a month for the first 10 years of retirement. And so you have to figure that out. So then you have to figure out what those numbers look like. That's the part people don't like looking at, but that's the most important part of it, really. You can control how much you save. You can control how much you spend. You really cannot control how much rate of return you make. You can try to diversify it and try to make it better, but you can't control all that stuff, but you can just control how much you save and how much you spend, right? And so essentially, those are important numbers to know. So I think knowing your numbers are really important. And then taking a look at, when do I want to retire? Like I talked about a little bit, there's this new kind of FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early movement. And I think when people want to retire early, they need to think about, am I going to be able to access certain accounts? Does it have a 59.5 rule on it? How are taxes with that? Different things like that. So those kind of things can come into play too. But I think honestly, if you know at least how much you think you'll want to spend in retirement per month, you will be far and above better than most people, because you will have a realistic view. And then you can back into, okay, well, take out one of those financial calculators. You can Google them online and back into what that number really looks like. And I tell you, it's more than most people think. People have this idea that it's $1 million. And once I hit $1 million, that's it. For most people, it's more than that. It is. And for some people, $1 million is not necessary. It's 400,000 is totally fine. So it just depends. And unfortunately, I'm making it more complicated, but you've got to factor in things like, do you think you're going to get Social Security? Do those kind of things have to factor into it too. So I do think having conversations with financial professionals at some point is important, but I think that if you can, the basic of just understanding what you want and kind of how much you think it's going to be, whether it's currently what you're doing or more, and I would say if you're traveling, $10,000 a month is not unreasonable. That's probably low, actually, for some people, depending on what type of travel we're doing. I think it's important. And stuff like, RVs are a big thing right now. RVs can be a little bit of a waste of money, but if that's what you want to do, okay, but you got to calculate all that stuff into, I'm going to purchase a $200,000 RV. okay, that's got to go into your plan, So things like that, I think that definition of what you want is the most important thing to take action on. And then just kind of start to try to figure out. And I think the biggest thing is being honest with yourself and not kind of playing into our delusions of, oh, this or that, like kind of cutting out that noise and saying, I know me, I'm a spender. It's going to be expensive. Instead of saying, oh, I'll be in retirement, so I won't have that problem. Nobody's ever complained about having too much money in retirement. I would lean towards that.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff, Lisa, for sure. I think it's so important to, again, just really think about what it is that we want and then work backwards from there.
Mhm.
And that's really what it sounds to me like. We've got to remember it's probably going to cost us more than we think it is.
Mhm.
And, we don't know what inflation is going to be like, so things will probably cost more in the future, just as we've seen over history, but we just have to be realistic and, not try to play that game like, oh, it's going to be cheaper. Like you said, I'm just not going to spend as much. I'm not going to need to spend as much. It's like, just be realistic with yourself and honest with yourself about what you like spending your money on. Are you going to keep spending your money on those things and, work that into the plan? Again, it all comes back to that, right? What is it you want and working that into your plan. So great stuff. So talking about saving, and I know some people are fortunate enough to have companies that they work for that offer 401k plans and even have matching, which is tremendous. And if you have a company that's matching, that's even better for you if you can contribute as much toward that. But is that enough? Is having a 401k savings enough to help you retire?
Mhm. That's a great question. It can be. Again, it depends on what we're trying to accomplish. It all goes back to that, right? If you're going to be like, I have some clients who are sitting in retirement, like my dad is a great example, sitting in retirement, not spending a huge amount of money, and so that might have been enough. But, for a lot of people, it's not enough. And I think actually doing the work and talking about diversification, we talk about diversification a lot in terms of like allocation and like investment allocation, but we don't talk enough about diversification of accounts, of tax types. That kind of stuff is very important when it comes to retirement. Like, how are you going to be taxed? Where do you think tax is going to go? Do you think we're in a low tax environment versus where you might be in 20, 30 years? I hate to say it, historically, we are actually in a pretty low tax environment for history. So, and if you look at other countries around the world, they're in a much higher tax brackets than we are. So probably it will be more. Again, nobody's ever complained that they had too much. So if you first save, it's okay. But you do have to calculate that factor in, because people will say, so the reason that people have this $1 million idea in their mind, I get a $2 million, I'm good, I'm done, is that there is these old school I don't think they're bad. I just think that they need to be talked about more in detail. There's this idea that you can take 4% of $1 million, that's $40,000 a year, and you can live off of that. And you live off that with some Social Security, you're at like 70, 80,000 if there's two of you. And that's a pretty good income in retirement. Nobody's talking about what kind of account this is. Is this a taxable account? Will you be taxed on that money when you take it out? What tax bracket are you going to be in? Are you a business owner? This happens a lot to business owners. And I don't know if you have a lot of business owners listening, but if they have friends or anything, they should tell them this too. Or if you're considering opening like a side hustle or something, you as business owners, we can run a lot of stuff through our business. You don't have that anymore once you don't have your business. And so taxes can be a lot higher for business owners than they were when they were working. And so putting everything in some tax deferred account and getting taxed on the money out can be problematic for them if they're not aware of that as what could happen. And we're very focused on not paying tax now. Well, you have to pay tax in the future, though. You don't get out of it, scot-free. And so it's like, well, we've got to think about a lot of those different things. And so there are these kind of things in our minds that will, tell us that, yeah, your 401k is great. That's your vehicle. But the funny thing is the 401k is relatively new. I think it was in the 80s, maybe in 70s that it was actually invented. And it was invented because pension plans were going away at companies. So Is that the best place to put your money? It really hasn't been proven yet, because the people who really have had their 401k for most of their lives are just getting into retirement. So I guess we will see. But essentially, I think to utilize your 401k at work is a great idea. Look into the Roth option of the 401k too. A lot of people don't even realize that that's available. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to give you some information on that. But really think about different types of accounts and how they will work together and play nice together in retirement to create income streams. Because that's what we're doing in retirement, is creating income streams for ourselves. So do I think all of your income should come from your 401k? For most people, I would say that they need a little bit more diversification than that.
Yeah. And you know what, Lisa, this is such great information. I think it points again to most people probably need someone to help them understand, because there is so many facets to this. And you just touched on a few, like, do you have your own business? Do you have a side hustle? And you're right, you have things that you can write off, expenses that you are running through your business you won't have when you retire. And the point that you made about what tax bracket are you going to be in when you retire? That's going to make a difference on the amount of money you're going to have at that point. And so these are such great things to think about. And again, having a partner, somebody who can help you with your planning, is so important. And I think even for those people who don't have a business and think, I just have my little savings and I just have maybe a 401k, I don't really need somebody like a financial advisor or, planner, consultant, whatever. But you kind of do. You really kind of do.
Most of my clients are executives at companies or employees at companies. They think that it's not that they think that they don't need it. Nobody's there to help them because, they've got their 401k. They might not have as big of an investment account on the side. That's why I do consultative work, because sometimes you don't have the assets to hit a minimum for a financial advisor to help you. But I do monthly consulting with people that maybe have all their assets in their 401k. Maybe I can't, help them in that regard, but I can still be there for them to help them build out a plan, stay on track, accountability, all that stuff. They still need that stuff. They still have a trust that they've been putting off doing for 5 years. That stuff happens, and they still need the same accountability. And I do think it's a flaw in our field that more advisors don't help the average worker in their planning, because they need it more than anybody. That's the majority of people. And they all go after business owners, probably because, they feel like it's a better money in it. But I think there's a huge market for people who are working, with their 401k. Like I said, I think that's 70% of my business is employees at places.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really the regular, like, quote unquote, regular people who need the most help, because they don't understand all the nuance of these different things with the different accounts and the different tax levels and, all of that kind of stuff. And you mentioned Roth, and I know there's Roth IRA and there's simple IRAs and there's 401ks and then high yield savings accounts and, like all these things that are, can be available to people, but they don't know that they are. And so
they don't know what the difference is.
Right. And so this is why it's so important for just, again, regular people to have someone that they can talk to about these things so they understand what's available, and to give them a leg up for their future in their retirement years, or maybe leaving something for their kids. And so, yeah, I think it's fantastic. Good stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay. There's so many more things that we could touch on. We barely have scratched the surface. It can be such a complex topic, not just for, all the options that are out there, but even just people's feelings around money and talking about money and planning and, all of that stuff. But at this point, I think, Lisa, is there anything that you haven't shared that you really think that the person listening needs to know? What would that be?
I think that in general, people start too big. Like even the bucket list planning can be a little overwhelming, right? And they say, look, I just want to start making some positive impacts in my journey and see how it goes. And so a lot of times we think so big and it gets overwhelming and we just don't do anything. So there are little things that you can do to just start building up those good habits. I call it the muscle of finance. You start building it up and it will turn into something fantastic. So we do have a resource on our website. I'll make sure I get you the link for that. But it's called Baby Step Your Way to Financial Independence. And there are 15 little things that you could just start doing tomorrow. Pick one, pick two, just start focusing on that. And if once that becomes a habit, you can start building in something else. But I think we're so hard on ourselves that we haven't gotten the full picture together, that we're just not doing anything different. And we blink and it's 15 years later and we're still doing the same crummy, financial habits that we have been doing for the last 15 years. And we're so upset with ourselves. So there are different things you can do to just start building up. It doesn't have to be so overwhelming.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you for that. For sure, I'll link that resource in the show notes. And I love the idea of baby steps. I've said it in other podcast episodes. I love Atomic Habits. James Clear's that whole book and the ideas around it, I think are brilliant. It's just
Yeah.
little incremental changes that, seem small. They're easy to do, but they ultimately add up to a lot. And I think that this is exactly what you're talking about, taking little steps, forming those little habits and making small changes that can lead to, big results. And
Yeah.
especially when you talk about money. And we didn't even touch on compound interest and,
Okay.
how that works. And I mean, I told my girls for years, compound interest, it's your friend. As much as you can invest now, it adds up to so much later because of compound interest. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what this is, right? Little tiny steps lead to big wins. So
Exactly.
yeah, love it. Well, Lisa, before we wrap up, is there any books that you would like to share with the listener about, I don't know, it could be financial, it could be anything that has been helpful or beneficial for you, or any podcasts that you think that the listener should check out?
So it's funny. The book that came to mind is actually not a finance book, and it seems like it's a book for business owners. But I'm going to tell you why I think it's for everybody. It's called The Thank You Economy by Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he talks about marketing for business owners mainly. But I think it's fantastic because it's talking about the client experience, and he is coming at it from talking from a business owner perspective. But to me, if you work at a company, if you're dealing with people on a professional level, a lot of what he talks about, you can just kind of sprinkle into your everyday work. And I think it will not only will it make your life better in terms of getting more clients or having a better client experience or whatever, but I think it will also help you be a little kinder to other people and realize how much better you feel when you do something to make somebody else's day a little bit better. And it's funny because he's written a lot of these books and he actually thinks that that's his best book, but nobody reads it because it's like too, woo woo or whatever he thinks it is. I think it's a great book. I really think it shows how to think outside the box to really make the client, the coworker, the spouse, the whoever in your life feel a little bit better and more appreciated, really. So I thought that one was good. And then actually a podcast I started listening to that I really want more women to listen to. And I told you before we started the show that I was thinking about doing a podcast, and it's actually kind of in the vein of this, which is the All In podcast. And I feel like it's, for tech, billionaires are very well off guys, but they talk about business, finance, they talk about some politics in there. It's a really interesting podcast and from four very different perspectives on things. And the way that they talk about business and just the economy in general and stuff, I think is fascinating. And it's kind of gotten me thinking about starting a podcast for women to start talking about not big issues like this. And, obviously I don't want to be a billionaire tech guy, but to just start having more conversations about money and those kind of things that really affect our everyday life that we keep kind of pushing to the side because it's just something that's like, as we started off full circle back to the beginning of the podcast, it's not something that women are used to doing because our moms didn't do that. And so I think the more we can talk about things in a conversational, fun, girlfriend to girlfriend way, that might change a little bit for women.
That's great. Great recommendations for sure. I will link the details in the show notes so that the listeners can easily find them. I love it. And this podcast, Pockets of Knowledge, has always been about sharing stories and information and knowledge to help educate. And really, it's for women by women. All of the guests have been women. And it's really, not that this information cannot be used by everybody. It absolutely can. This information can be used by every single person who listens. But I feel like, women have been underserved in a lot of areas for a long time. And so I think it's brilliant if you start a podcast that talks about finances and really how women can, learn from that. I think it's a great idea. Well, Lisa, can you share with the listeners how they can find you if they have more questions about retirement, finances, any questions, how would they be able to reach you?
Yeah, probably the best place to reach me is on our website, which is onevisionretire.com. You can read about me, contact us. That's probably the easiest way. If you just want some more information, just to get a little bit more familiar with how I work, I do have an active YouTube channel that I post to all the time. So that can give you little bits of information until you feel comfortable reaching out if that feels weird to you at first.
Sure. And I'll link the YouTube channel in the show notes. Are you on any other social media that you want to share?
Oh, I'm on all of them. So I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the one I'm the most active on, but Facebook, X, I'm on there too. So any place that's out there. But I would say my YouTube's been getting the most love from me, and then probably LinkedIn as well.
Okay. I'll include the link in the show notes for the listeners to find that. Thank you again, Lisa. This has been fantastic. And I just love this conversation around, taking these steps that will get us to where we want to go, and remembering that we've got to look at what it is that we want and where do we want to go in order to set that plan in motion. And so thank you for coming on and sharing this information with us. It's been fantastic. I appreciate your time and your knowledge. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Desiree. It's been really fun to have this conversation, and hopefully it helps somebody.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.